This is the Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino, and tonight I'm joined by a full house of Miff, Paddy and James as we once again cover all things Celtic. Miff, Celtic are now on a 30-game unbeaten streak domestically. Will we make it 31 this weekend?
Certainly hope so, Tino. Hello, first and foremost. Yeah, listen, I think the only thing that can defeat Celtic at the weekend is complacency. Naturally, no one's going to say they're going to be complacent before the event of something. You need to wait to see what the attitude and the mentality is of the team on the day, but we can't be in much better form going into it, albeit that we've got a big game before that as well to take care of.
Were we nearly a wee bit complacent at the weekend? Some slack moments against Hibs?
Yeah, but I think that comes for the fact there is pretty much constant rotation in the team as well, so it's not like we're playing a settled team week in, week out. The manager is trying to make use of the squad, so I do think you need to recognise that, and that will have an impact on the fluidity of performance. But there's going to be moments that we are a wee bit, we're caught cold through making the changes, through the sheer amount of games that we have. There's lots of hazards in our way, but I think that's what makes that overall run all the more impressive.
Yeah, it does that. James, obviously a massive week ahead. We've got Zagreb tomorrow night, Tuesday, 5:45 kickoff for that one, and then Rangers on Sunday at Hampden, League Cup final. Some tough calls for the manager to make. Do you think he goes with more or less the same side for both games, or does he shake it up?
No, I think the rotation has its place, and I think for these two games he works out within that rotation who's really staked their claim and who's shining, and he picks on that strength. I don't think there'll be much experimentation going on.
What about Luke McCowan? He's got a tricky week to manage headwise, knowing that as a player he's now at Champions League level. He could possibly play against Zagreb, but he knows that he's cup tied for Sunday. That's a sore one to take, isn't it?
It is, and it could influence the manager's decision making that he wants a wee bit of consistency in his starting 11s, so he might not get picked tomorrow night just because he can't make Sunday night. Another school of thought is you spread the load between the midfield, but I think Rodgers will want a wee bit of consistency with these two. These are the two biggest games we've had, in this run, certainly probably since the start of the season, I would say. When these two, you're qualifying for the playoffs in Champions League and you've got silverware in the cupboard, so it's a tough one on McCown. I thought he was just beneath himself on Saturday, but given his performance the weekend before, that's no great shame,
Yeah, and he's been great so far. It's a huge week, Paddy, potentially biggest week of the season, but as I was saying to him if there, great to get the win on Saturday, 3-0, another clean sheet, but it doesn't quite tell the storyline of the game, does it?
It doesn't, and I think Miff makes a good point in terms of there has been so many changes. You're also then having a change in the back line as well, where we're then seeing Trusty moving into the right hand side. It doesn't seem the most natural for him, in my opinion, and I do think there was a few times where we're getting caught up too far up in the park. A good team picks us off. We've seen it happen already this season with Dortmund. I'm not too worried by it. I think there is also an element of we got the second goal right after obviously the beginning of the second half. There's a bit of that there. Well, let's reserve a bit of energy because the run we're on, not just at the end of December but the end of January, there's some amount of games to be played in the next 6 weeks. So I think we're managing things really well, and it wasn't a great performance, but that's why we've got a goalkeeper capable of doing what he's doing as well.
Yeah, exactly that. And let's talk about Kasper Schmeichel. So man of the match on Saturday, but to stay with you, Paddy, he's much more than just a shot stopper for Celtic. He's become a very big and important part of this dressing room already, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has, and I made the statement before the Champions League started that, let's see what he does for us in Europe. He has went on an incredible run, and I think you see how important it is to the team, how he's talking to his backline before the first and the second half kicks off. It's becoming very, very influential for them. But it's not just that for Kasper Schmeichel, it's what he's bringing onto the park as well in terms of his distribution, in terms of how comfortable he is with the ball at his feet and the reading of the game, bar obviously the own goal situation with Club Brugge. But you've got to kind of look at the fact that he was getting himself ready for the pass back from Nicholas Kuhn.
He was in the right place.
Effectively. As
long as Vickers doesn't try and score.
As long as somebody else doesn't get the ball before he was meant to. But I think he's been massive for us. And I think that, time will tell in the next few games if we get to the end of this year and, we've won the majority of those games that we spoke about for this block. he's played a massive part. So I think, there's already talks about extending his contract.
What is his deal? Is it a 2-year deal or is it
1 year with
There's
an
one,
option?
yeah.
1 year with an option. So for both parties, really.
Does that mean that the club can take the option if they
Yeah.
want? Or
Yeah,
Right,
the club have the say in that, with the looks of things. So it's up to, again, I think I would still ask Kasper, what do you want to do in this situation? But he seems to be loving it here.
I think he finds himself in a position. There's obviously very obvious parallels with Joe Hart's story, but he finds himself at a stage in his career where he thought he was on the wind it down, and he's playing Champions League and having huge finals.
No disrespect to Joe Hart at all. Kasper Schmeichel's a better goalkeeper.
I think he's better all round, and that's with all the respect to Joe Hart. I just think in everything he offers, they're both leaders, so that, they're maybe on par in terms of that. But in terms of the ability stuff, I think Schmeichel's a better shot stopper, and I think he's better with the ball at his feet. James, me and Brido chatted on one of the shows last week, and I asked a question of all the pretty decent goalies Celtic have had in recent times, and particularly you'd have guys like Boric and Fraser Foster, not doing so great at Spurs right now, but in terms of ball at feet in this modern part of the game, Schmeichel's as good as we've ever had, I think.
Aye, absolutely. It wasn't Foster's thing. Boris did it when he wanted to just take the mick out of someone. It wasn't really part of his game. It wasn't so much a big part of the game back then.
Yeah.
I thought Joe Hart learned it all right. But yeah, I think in the modern era, Schmeichel's just grown up playing for teams that want to play it from the back as a sweeper keeper. So, it's been second nature to them, and we're getting the benefit from it.
But you still need to have an ability. I know where you're coming from, but I think you still need to be able to be strong enough to be able to do so. I was watching a clip on X, formerly known as Twitter. There's a goalkeeper in Brazil, Kevin Mayer. If you get the chance, put his name into Twitter. It is ridiculous what this guy's doing.
Kevin Mayer.
Mayer, Meir. I'll send it over. He's like a fifth. 11 outfield players, basically. He's ridiculous with what he's doing with the ball at his feet, and he's almost playing up at the halfway line in some of these teams' attacks.
Any man save.
Few clubs are looking at
Brighton.
Brighton, aye.
I think just on Kasper Schmeichel, I genuinely think if push came to shove, he could play sweeper. I think he looks like a kind of just stick him in centre mid and let him ping it about. Joe Hart could do it, but you could tell he wasn't very naturally comfortable at it. It just wasn't his thing. He was kind of
learning it.
A bit awkward looking. Schmeichel's just so comfy with the ball.
Hart's very comfortable if he knows the next pass is on, whereas I think Schmeichel is quite happy to take it in the narrower positions, and he's quite happy to look for that out ball. Whether he's putting his fullback under pressure as well, the minute he plays the ball into either Greg Taylor, Baye or Alistair Johnson's feet, he's then moving into the next position to get it back. Yeah. That's the difference. I think with Joe Hart, it was like, here's the ball, the manager told me to do that. Good luck.
Hope it works out for you.
Wish you all the best.
Miff, obviously, I mentioned we spent a bit of time with my good friend John Collins last week, and he said that Kasper Schmeichel was the signing of the summer in his opinion. Do you agree with that? There's decent competition there.
Aye, there's good competition there, but I think Schmeichel's just been an absolute revelation. Not that we thought it would be any different. I think the news was very well received because it made sense. And also there was a bit of forward planning with Sinisola being signed at the same time as well, who had some lower league experience. Exeter was signed for Aston Villa, so that goalkeeping plan was met with a lot of approval in the summer, and it's bearing fruit. Obviously, we've not seen anything of Sinisola, even in cup games or anything like that, but I think that's testament to just how well Schmeichel settled in. And I think whilst there's changes in the back line, as long as Schmeichel remains there, we remain confident in whatever combination that we have playing, such as his impact been since he's come into the team.
That's the kind of media yardstick. We're getting a kind of negative reports from the game on Saturday. The media saying, your goalie to make a few saves. It's like, that's why we signed them.
Yeah.
It's part of the game.
Exactly.
Great keeper.
And we cannot see the level we've been playing this season. We're not going to do that every week. No chance. And we still scored 3 goals and get the clean sheet.
Yeah.
I said it last week. You cannot play 38 games of scintillating, beautiful football. It's just not the way it goes. You don't win leagues by doing so. You need to go to Pittodrie on a shitty night on a Wednesday, pouring wind and rain, and do what you need to do. And sometimes you'll be below par at Celtic Park, but you still get the win. If part of that win is Kyogo Furuhashi scoring his 81st goal for Celtic, talk me through the technique for that.
I've never seen anything like it before.
leaving it the fives.
Genuinely, to receive, to take the ball the way he did, it's unreal, and to keep it under control. I mean, it's one thing wanting to do that, it's another thing actually pulling it off.
And give the goalie the eyes.
He's phenomenal. He is. He's really just phenomenal. And you know, certainly for my two boys anyway, that'll be a striker they'll remember with just as much fondness as I remember any Celtic striker that I've seen.
Yeah, Paddy, it's incredible technique. Yeah,
It's just a beautiful goal. Just the way that it just sets up nicely for him. I actually think I've heard a few saying not a brilliant pass with Forrest. I think it is a great pass. I think it's.
Was it James that said that?
It might have been.
I thought Forrest was excellent Saturday.
I thought like just the way it first touch kills it dead, but he's bamboozled their defence with just that overstepping leg. It's what a goal.
I think as a defender, you know, you've kind of held your line. He's got in behind you, but you see that he's maybe went a wee bit too quick. The ball's slightly, now just ever so slightly behind him, you think, all right, I've got a chance here.
Aye.
And just within a split second, he's had this miracle adjustment.
Where's the ball?
It's just phenomenal.
From his point of view, though, it's pure instinct. You don't have time to say, all right, it's coming at an angle, or well, maybe I can do this wee hop, skip, and jump thing. It's just natural to him. He's just a guy who's got such sharp mind, sharp feet, sharp movement. And now and then when he goes on he goes on wee kind of mini droughts, doesn't he? He doesn't score for a few games, and some guys start asking questions. The guy's a genius.
As in that's when you're really starting to see the magic, Kyogo. You know, because I think we're playing better football under Rodgers than Ange, but I also think we're playing slightly more boring football.
Ange,
slightly, because Ange was just swashbuckling. And I think Kyogo maybe expressed himself a wee bit more under Ange, but he's more effective under Rodgers. It's all that, what do you want kind of thing. But that was him fully expressing himself on Saturday. I was up, boycott's over, I was back. I was up the other end of the ground, sitting the Lisbon Lions, and the complete opposite side of the where Kyogo is, and I'm going, couldn't see it, but I know you've done something. And then you see it on the screen, you go, that's excellent. And you go home and see it on the telly, and you go, for goodness sake, man, it's phenomenal.
It's up the Lisbon Lions with it, and Michael Nicholson with trust.
I was in the Hibs end.
We've mentioned James Forrest there, Paddy. Phenomenal servant for Celtic, scored in 15 consecutive seasons, but the goal drought continues. That elusive 16th season in a row goal is still not quite there. But
got his assist there though.
He did.
Aye.
He did.
But we're talking goals, James Cammett.
He likes to tick both.
Aye, but it's
It's in the postal pad, isn't it?
Could it be Sunday?
It's like he's been reading my notes. I says, well, we see it on Sunday.
Could it be tomorrow? I'll take tomorrow. Aye, but it could be Sunday.
That would be sweet, wouldn't it?
Be lovely.
Yeah,
lovely.
He's he seems very comfortable in his role in the team, though, doesn't he? You know, whether he's coming in off the bench or getting a relatively rare start, Paddy. He's such a mature player for us this weather.
He really is. I still laugh when he does the pressers, though. It's like it's really
everyone's like his first one.
Aye, but he was great the other day, like because they were talking about his records, and he remained very humble about it all. And he says, "Well, none of this happens unless I'm playing in." With some great managers, and I've got great players around me. So he keeps himself very grounded, and he always talks about, all the scoring records, assist records. It's great. He was obviously getting asked if he feels he'll be there to become the most decorated player. And again, it was all back to it's all about the club. It's all about the club, and he kept pushing onto that answer. And I think what you see from James Forrest is just the professional. And I think to keep himself in that position, to tweak his game the way he has, he knows he's not going to beat players with pace every time is maybe what he used to do, but he's so clever on the ball. And actually, I'd quite like to see him come a little bit more central. See just the way he ended up in that position for Kyogo. I think he's got that in his locker. Probably maybe not as robust, and maybe wouldn't be able to do it being like a box-to-box midfielder the way we kind of like to have at Celtic, but for the last 10-15 minutes I would have him. He's the one pulling the strings in that position in the park. I think he's got it.
I think he has. You see his link-up playing in and around the box. It's very intricate, but it's just very clever, and he rarely gives it away these days. That's just become a part of his game. If we win on Sunday, he becomes joint record trophy winner for Celtic Football Club in all our history. He would go on 25 along with Bobby Lennox, which would just be incredible. And the hope would be that he would even exceed that later on in the season. So brilliant for James Forrest, and hopefully he gets that goal shortly. If Arne Engels is the man that opens the scoring, do you think he was a wee bit reserved in his celebrations? And to the point where maybe he's been hearing some of the headlines about him?
Yeah, he's probably aware that he's under a bit of pressure, but also he didn't start against Aberdeen either, so it might be be a reaction to that. But no doubt, he's a young man. You know, he's more than likely going to feel an element of pressure, A, because of the price tag, but B, because he's came to a very big club and there's more eyes on him than there ever has been before. Bear in mind, he's also made his international debut as well. So, unfortunately for him, that noise comes with the territory. He better get used to it, because I'm pretty sure he's going to go to another big club when he moves on for Celtic in the future. So it's all part of his development and his learning process, and that you do need to block noise out. You need to keep faith with the man. I mean, the man we've just been speaking about, James Forrest, can you imagine if he'd to listen even to this podcast in the past? You know, it would probably affect his mental health and his morale. So part of what you have to do is accept it, but also deal with it and keep faith in your process, your training methods, your manager's faith in you, which is probably the most important thing. The squad and the manager's faith in him is undoubted. So it's just part of a process he has to go through. To be honest with you, I think it's a bit of nonsense. You know, people making really ridiculous statements and judgments on him so early. Surely the very fact we've invested money in a player at that age, with a view to trying to achieve something in Europe, means it's support that he needs rather than written off after 10 games or something like that. It's just an absolute nonsense for me.
James, it's his first goal in open play. He's obviously scored a couple of penalties for us, and it's not to cause trouble. It's just, you're saying here what we've seen. We've seen how he celebrated his 2 penalty goals. He's wheeling off and he's knee sliding, he's doing all that. Far more reserved this time around.
Yeah, but that can just be a work ethic thing as well, knowing that he's got work to do, and he's got levels to get through. I certainly don't have any issue with it. I'm glad that he's aware that he's a developing player. But you listen to Rodgers talk about him, he's got full backing, and that's the only thing he should be listening to. So I've got no doubts in him at all. If you look at Matt O'Reilly there with us for 2.5 seasons, and I would say Engels had an in and out game on Saturday. He was good in parts and he was a wee bit kind of off in parts, a wee bit slow to tackle and stuff like that. Slow to get to tackles, I mean. But how many in and out games did Matt O'Reilly have? He's away for 30 million, so let's just calm down.
Paddy, here's a question. And Brendan Rodgers has spoken about the fact that Arne Engels isn't a Matt O'Reilly. He said words to that effect. And someone kind of asked us the question on the comments a couple of weeks ago. Is he a number 8, which is where he's been playing, or is he actually a more genuine number 6, which is where he was playing before he arrived at Celtic?
He was playing week in, week out as a 6, and it's very rarely that Augsburg put him into the 8. He needs to find his feet with it, like any other player would, and you need to find your feet within a completely different system. I'd ask anyone to watch the footage back, because it's the way he turns round. Yeah, that doesn't look as if he's celebrating too much, but within 30 seconds, at another camera angle, he's smiling away. Mm-hmm. I think again, the media and fan media have jumped on this. I'm pointing at you, Tino.
Unpopular podcaster starts Arne Engels.
Exactly. No, I think he's not caring about what fans are saying. No chance. No chance. And even if you want to go down the rabbit hole with it, his social media posts, thanks for the support, really good result this weekend. Guy's just focusing on what he's doing, probably looking to see if he was offside.
Maybe so. Miff, what do you make of the number 6 versus number 8 though? I wonder, is it possible that he became available to Celtic? He was on Celtic's radar. They realised what a talent he was, sounded him out, got the word that he might be willing to come to Scotland and come to Celtic. And maybe we thought he was a guy that might play alongside Callum McGregor or allow Callum McGregor a break. But you can't sign a guy for 11 million for Celtic and not play him. And I wonder if he's just been played out of position to allow the manager to find a place for him in the team where it's just not his natural place.
I'm not really having that though. The difference between 6 and 8 being played out of position, I don't.
Do you not think they're really quite different positions?
A midfielder's a midfielder.
I don't think so.
No, I'd agree. Go with Tino.
Is Tomoki Iwata going to be doing the same job as Matt O'Reilly? Is Eboué Kouassi going to do the same job?
But Tomoki Iwata's playing in League One.
Mm-hmm. I think it's starting to become a more specialised role, particularly for Celtic. Could
N'Golo Kante go and play what Matt O'Reilly does?
No, probably. No way are we signing somebody for £11 million that can only play in one position in the midfield. No chance.
I think
so. You're buying somebody to develop them with an eye on their attributes to play to complement your style of play.
Aye, but
now I think from what we've seen in Engels, yes, he may have played a slightly different role for Osberg, but given that where how we set up in league games, first and foremost, will be very different to how Osberg will set up in league games. Then we have obviously looked at Engels and went, right, we can take him, or Rodgers thinks we can take him and mould him in that particular position.
I think that's
now. There was never going to be a case that he would job share with Cal McGregor. I think that's fairly, we would all accept that would be the case. So he was obviously being bought with another position in mind. So I don't think the difference is so great that would be, that would be, you would describe it as being played out of position. I think that's a bit, just personally, I just think that's a bit extreme. I think for what he's been asked to do, it maybe involves probably being a bit wide a wee bit more. I think that'd be fair to say. Maybe make a few more tackles than he's had to make before as well. But ultimately, I just think you can clearly see what we've bought. He's a big unit. He's strong. He'll be physical when he needs to be. The pace of the game in Scotland is the key thing. Doesn't matter what position you're playing in that midfield, whether you're playing 6, 8, 10, whatever. Peter Grant, 4 pointing away. It will take time for you to get used to the pace of the game and how dynamic it is. And also, to be fair to Rodgers, he likes his midfield to be fairly relentless around pressing and getting up and supporting the strikers, pressing and getting back and helping the defence and all those things. To me, whether you're playing 6, 8, 10, I think it's just been a genuine culture shock for Engels. That's what we're experiencing now, is him just trying to find his feet. New system, new culture, new style of play, all those things all mashed into one. But if you're only going to look at the negatives, I think that's really, that's not fair on him. What we should be looking for is the positives. And I think what you can see is somebody who is willing to take responsibility at a young age and who never ever hides. He never hides.
I agree with that. I think that's all fair and accurate. I think he's very capable in the 8. I think he might be better as a 6. It's just my opinion. He's capable at 8, but can play better as a 6.
I think it comes down to what you've said in terms of, like, it's a bit of a culture shock and it's a bit of an awakening in terms of what level he needs to get at over in Scotland. But for me, on paper, I think his worst game has been Dortmund. I can't really think of a game where I've said, get him off. I generally, and I'm not being the fanboy here for Arne Engels. I think, obviously, you want to see your players do well, no matter who it is. 11 million's a big outlay for anyone, but especially for a club like Celtic. But it is, I've mentioned this many times before, this is something that we as fans really need to get used to and actually take the pressure off the player.
Yeah.
It's familiarity. It's familiarity in the position.
We clamour for years for the board to move through the gears and start signing a different bracket. As soon as we do, we start lumping pressure on the boy. It's not.
But that's hand in hand with the Scottish media on top of them as well, because
they need something.
They need to sell what they're selling. But at the end of the day, there's so many of them there that will put the pressure on any price tag. I mean, we're going back to a figure that's still less than what a player was signed for 24 years ago in the Scottish League in Torrey Andre Flo. Yeah. We need to get real as a nation and realise when we look at what's happening down south and the money that's getting put about down there, we're still nowhere near that. And I'm not saying that the clubs have got the money to do that, but we probably devalue our league by not thinking we could go up to that amount as well.
Do you know, the questions will go on, and that's just life at Celtic for a record signing. That's just something that Arne Engels at 21 will need to get used to. But I think we're all confident as a group, but none of us are been down on the Bhoys. I think we all agree he's a pretty special talent and will go on to be probably one of our best players in years. So I don't think there's any great concern. It's maybe just taking him just a wee bit more time to hit the ground running. We'll catch a wee bit more. We're going to do a preview for that Dynamo Zagreb game in the last part of the show. The Arne Engels question will come up again and we can maybe revisit some bits and bobs. Before we go to the break, just a couple of shout outs. A shout out to Paul Downey. Paul's a long serving kitman over at St Anthony's in Governy. Really good guy. Massive Celtic fan. Had a good chat with him yesterday. We were there for a charity game for Ants legend Mark McCush, who sadly passed away a few months ago. Great to see so many of the folk down there to honour Cush on the day. Separately, Miff, I also need to give a shout out to a very charismatic fella that I met on Saturday, Eyeball from Duke Street. I don't think that's his real name, but that's the name he's given. I met him in Greg's, James. I'd nipped in for a salad and it was great just to chat about Celtic in general with him, but a really fun guy. And he said he'd be watching, so if he is watching or listening, give us a shout. Tino at thecelticexchange.com. I've got a wee something which I think you like and I'll pass that on to you. Paddy, you were also on foreign shores for the game. You were in Amsterdam last week and caught up with some folk from the Dubai Hoops CSC.
Sean I met from the Dubai CSC, took in the game with him and Molly Malone's. It's a great wee boozer. First time I'd ever been there. And one of those ones you've got a conversation straight away when both of you are there to watch a Celtic game. So no, it was good to get chatting to him, and he turns out he knows a few of our friends as well. So all the best for their CSC and what they're doing as well, guys.
Yeah, sounds like they're doing some good stuff. So that's Sean at Dubai Hoops CSC. Okay, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll take a look at some listeners' questions. Let's kick off this middle section of the Celtic Exchange Weekly by answering some questions from you, the listeners. Question 1 comes from Noel McGrath, a fella that myself and James know pretty well. And Noel says, as it stands, both Greg Taylor and Alex Bailly aren't contracted to be at Celtic next season. With Alessandro Bernabe having just been named in the Brazilian League's Team of the Season following an impressive loan spell at Internacional, is our left-back solution staring us right in the face?
No.
Okay.
End of section.
He's we were just having a wee chat off air about the standard out there. So they finished 5th in the league. He made 23 appearances. He scored 3 goals, had a few assists, and seems to be highly rated. But maybe is it the case, Miff, he's not playing at the best level out there?
I watched the Copa Libertadores final and was surprised at just how poor the quality was. Now, you could turn around and say occasion one of the teams had been down to 10 men quite early. There was loads of factors on that, but I would go back to the point that from what I've seen of Bernabe, maybe it's just a Scottish football style thing, contrasting with his style, but it was never really going to happen from over here, I don't think. I think he's obviously found a niche for himself and it's going well for him. I can't see a set of circumstances that results in Alejandro Bernabe being Celtic starting left back next season.
Alejandro.
I
had a chat.
Don't call my name. Don't call me.
Chat a couple of weeks ago with Josh McCafferty. As you lads know, Josh focuses on Celtic's youth academy and loan players, and we had a wee chat about Bernabe. And the stories are that Celtic have slapped a 10-point-something euro price tag on him, something like £8 million. And when we chatted through, what do you do? Do you bring him back? Do you hopefully, mould him back into the player that you thought he might have been? Or do you take the 8 odd million? You take the money, don't you?
I think the problem is we're trying to sell a £5,000 motor for 10 grand and you get £0 for that. So I wouldn't go down that road. I think that's mad money. Whatever we paid for him is what I would take to ship him.
But he seems to be popular out there and there's clubs out there with money. So I think if you can get that, though, you take it, don't you?
It's maybe a starting position, but I wouldn't be getting in my own way to let him go play football elsewhere and just clear him off the wages.
Yeah, so from Bernabe's point of view, he's 24 years of age. He signed for us for 3.75 million. It's quite a lot of money for a guy that's done very little in a Celtic shirt. He signed from Lanús in Argentina in summer 2022. He has been now touted for a call-up for Argentina, the current World Cup holders, which would just seem crazy, wouldn't it?
I know nothing about football.
In fact, somebody touted him for a Brazil call-up out there.
Aye.
They obviously got their players mixed up. But
It's not entirely crazy. What I would say is that they do... in South America, a lot of the players that are playing domestically, there is quite a big mix. They try and keep as much of a mix as possible with the amount that are over in Europe playing. That is a huge factor in what they try and operate with. I don't think he's awful. I think that there is glimpses of a footballer there, and it could be the consistency of playing in a similar style of football that he was used to in Argentina. The reason we go and spend 3.75 million on him, I think that he's found himself in a comfortable position in Brazil. What I'm saying is that I just don't see it translate to what we are trying to do at Celtic. I don't think his attitude's been right at all. I don't think it's just worked out for him at all. But at such a young age, such a big move as well, it's a lot to kind of adjust to. So listen, if he goes and makes it in the Argentina team, I don't think it's Celtic's fault. I just don't think it's worked out.
He will not be Argentina's left back.
No, I'm not saying he'll be left back,
because I think he has an awful left back. I think he's a decent footballer, but he's never left back in his
life.
life.
He could be in their squad, so I just generally wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we've seen Edson Braithwaite come on for a World Cup final at one point, So,
but you've seen his defending. It's so. But you've also seen him going forward, and it's outstanding.
Aye, absolutely.
What you've got, and you touched on there, Paddy, is he's probably just found a comfort spot out there. The football environment suits him. You're maybe allowed to be a wee bit hear him, scare him, and gung ho and whatever. Whereas from our point of view, we're watching a guy in Nicholas Kuhn who couldn't quite fit at Bayern Munich, couldn't quite fit at Ajax, didn't work out at Leipzig when he was younger. but he's found an environment now in Celtic that's perfect for him. And sometimes players just find that at different points in their career, and it might well be the case there. To give Noel his place, Noel asked a question. He has asked a question whilst also saying he's not the answer, by the way, but he's asked the question. But we definitely have a situation there, because as of, what is this, the 9th of December, as of a few weeks' time, Greg Taylor can be talking to other clubs, and there's various rumours as to whether the club Celtic have offered him.
I want to throw in a couple of words on that, because there's a bit of mischief making, I would say, from the Taylor side, and I'm not saying who or where it comes from, but it's like
names.
The word they're putting out is there's no contract offer on the table, right? I've heard that from two different places, two different sources.
Your sources.
I've,
like all good journalists.
Wait for triangulation for a third, but we'll go with two. But the thing is, if your agent is saying I want 25 grand a week and he's guaranteed to start, then the contract's never going to materialise. No. You can keep negotiating until you get to a point of putting it in paper, and then there's a contract in front of you. But specifically, the wording from the Taylor camp is he's not been offered a contract. It's like your agent isn't negotiating well enough to get you a contract offer. So
and that gets you €0 grand.
€0 grand.
I'm pretty sure though that Rodgers had mentioned in the summer that
exactly.
there was an offer on the table.
But we'll have a value.
Yeah, of course we will.
And it's his agent's job to have that higher value, but you need to find the midpoint or take your options.
I know, it's quite. It makes for a good headline to say no offer has been tabled and all that stuff. The bottom line is talks are clearly ongoing.
Yep.
Agent says this, Celtic say that, and they'll nudge, and they'll maybe meet somewhere in the middle, or maybe they won't. But I don't think it's right to say there's nothing been put to Greg Taylor. There must have been some. The club must have put an opening offer and said, right, okay, listen, we might take your wages down slightly because you're a bit older, or only a 2-year deal rather than a 3.
Or that you're just going to be that backup player. You're going to be that player.
And that he doesn't want to sign that deal.
But Rodgers has been really, really clear that he wants Greg Taylor, in my opinion, to be the same as what Anthony Ralston is to Alistair Johnson. And that is the stark reality of it. And I know that there's a sentimental side to Greg Taylor and the amount we've had to rely on him.
Sorry.
Nah, but it's brilliant.
He's been very good late.
We've relied on him so much domestically, but European football, we speak about the next level, and he's just not there. He's not at it. So that's why that offer is not 25 grand.
I also won against Duke, where he just couldn't be a left back. You know what I mean?
He also set up the winner.
Yeah. He's a left back.
I don't care, he set up the winner.
Aye, but he's primarily defender.
He's obviously went on strike getting a haircut until it's sorted as well. So I think it's very
very
important. It's very
so
important.
bad.
There was actually one point, I can't remember what game it was, and he was at left back and he get kind of squared up and he was joking, and then he fixed his shed as he was joking. And I was like, Greg, maybe now we need to look
get the brownie,
going to the barbers
or the headband.
So what you're trying to say, James, is Greg's agent is trying to sell a 10 grand car for a 5 grand car for 10 grand. Is that what you're telling me?
I know what you do for a job. You should be able to articulate this much better than you're doing. Is that what he's trying to do?
Managed to get Bernabé to be the driver.
Right.
At 3 a.m.
Allegedly. It's not a good place to be. Aye.
No.
It's not allegedly.
Is it? All right, okay.
Anyway, we've gone off track, but there's
Off-piste.
as I say, in about 3 weeks' time, Greg Taylor can look at other clubs or speak to other clubs. He can sign a pre-contract, or he might even make a move if someone makes the right offer for him. So whatever way you want to dress it up, it is a problem. It's a situation for Celtic because the two current left backs might not be here by the start of next season, and it remains to be seen what Alex Baig is on to do. So it's just not a great situation because we've got some massive games. We're on a big week this very week, and you've got players that it's clear from, we're speculating a bit about what is and isn't happening for Greg Taylor, but he's clearly not settled. Things aren't like he would want them to be just now, and that can't be a good thing for anybody.
I think overall he's handling it fairly well. I think he's playing quite well, just wee examples aside, but I think he is generally, it's not overly phasing him. I think the competition has been a good part of that as well, that it's sharpened him up. What he is doing, whatever happens at Celtic, is he's playing for a place somewhere, whether it's at Celtic or elsewhere. He's got to look, play his best. But, in the summer we didn't have a goalie, and now we've got one that we're talking about is maybe the best we've had in a number of years, with what seems to be a great backup. So there's people getting paid really good money to identify players and negotiate those players and sign those contracts. We've got a new setup in the director of football with Paul Tisdale, so it's not something I'm overly worried about.
Good doctor.
Is he a doctor?
Aye,
Football doctor.
Spin doctor.
by his own admission, a football doctor. Okay, so interesting one from Noel, but there's certainly a situation at left back. We just don't think that Bernabé will be the solution.
No.
Question 2 from Martin McDonald. good pal of everybody, particularly yourself, Paddy. And Martin asks about it's about the midfield. So Arne Engels will come back up slightly here as well. With Brendan Rodgers continuing to make changes in his midfield, Callum McGregor is the one player who remains constant in the middle of the park. Of the other 4 options, Rio Hatate, Arne Engels, Luke McCowan and Paulo Bernardo, who do we think that Calmac prefers playing alongside? So obviously we've spoken, Miff, about number 8s versus number 6s, but if Calmac had to choose, and we're doing a bit of guessing here, who do you think would be his preferred to?
I think Bernardo and Hatate probably complement him the best, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
For what reasons?
Because I like the two of them. So I'm just trying to think what Callum McGregor would think he was like me.
It's more like if Callum McGregor was to think like you,
yes.
who would he put? Right, okay,
aye.
got it.
Aye. So, no, I just think style-wise, I suppose if we go on what we've seen so far from Bernardo, I think he could probably play every role in the midfield if you want to pigeonhole his positions, 6, 8, 10. But
that's a snidey wee guy.
I know. Do we look at you and everything?
Bitter man.
Yeah, yep. I thought I'd get back in. I'll get $0 back in and off for then. But with Hatate, I think Hatate, as we saw in the Aberdeen game, just has those moments in him that he's worth keeping on the pitch for as long as possible. I don't kind of like the fact that Bernardo seems to have faded into sort of a sub, and almost he's getting used a wee bit too sparingly for me. I'm a huge Bernardo fan, huge. But I would just say, based on playing styles, I would assume, obviously I can't speak for Callum, I would assume it would be Bernardo and Hatate.
Paddy, just to follow on from that, I think Luke McCowan, Arne Engels and Paulo Bernardo,
Follow on, I think you're on their own podcast, mate.
I think they can all play number 6 as well. I think they've got it within them to be that deeper line midfielder. But Rio Hatate, he's an out and out 8. I think we can agree on that. I think Callum McGregor, this is your last week.
Do you think?
You're
do you
out.
think?
An out and out.
I know.
He's
Can Hatate?
Will you put Hatate in the 6?
No chance.
Absolutely no way,
So
man.
what do you think Rio Hatate is?
a midfielder.
Would you put Hatate as your
There's
your
positions
centre
in the
midfield?
midfield.
Carry on.
All
My
midfielders
God.
are the same.
Have you watched football?
I'm just going to sit and look at my cup.
Nah.
Paddy, as I say,
Bring in the other cups and anyone that's watching. Centre mid, holding mid, attacking mid, different positions in the midfield. There you go, mate.
CDM.
Paddy, what's your thoughts? I think Callum McGregor I think he's keen to take Luke McCowan under his wing. I think there's a bit of camaraderie there. But do you think he sees him as a starter, or who do you think he prefers to play with just now?
There's a little bit of taking someone like Luke McCowan under their wing when they've built up enough credit in the bank already at that age of 26. So the experience for me for McCowan is there. It's just the adjustment of going to a different level and a more attacking minded setup. I actually think it's more, you'll be looking at Arne Engels and saying, here, this guy can play football. What can we do with him? I think he relishes the challenge of being able to bring the best out of these players, and you hear everyone talking about what it's like to arrive at Celtic, and big people in the changing rooms like Forrest and Callum McGregor, and what they do in terms of bringing that winning mentality. And I think that Callum McGregor will see who's got it in the locker in terms of who can play football, but who can cope with wearing the heaviest jersey.
See,
in my opinion.
just on the point of McCowan, I think it's quite uncanny how similar McGregor and McCowan are. Like, as in playing style, just
the way they
addressing the ball,
the way they move the ball, I would agree with you.
It's mad.
You'll remember Kenny Carmichael. Kenny Carmichael appeared on episode 1 of the Celtic Exchange in December 2020.
What a good looking guy.
He's a handsome boy.
He's a good
We're
boy.
approaching 4 years on that, but Kenny messaged just a couple of days ago saying that he thinks that McCowan is absolutely the natural successor to Callum McGregor. He's 5 years younger, so McCowan's 26 versus McGregor's 31, and it would just seem like a perfect fit. If McCowan can continue to develop, and you're right, Paddy, he's got a couple of levels to go to get used to what Celtic do, Champions League and otherwise, but he could be a very natural fit in there. But the interesting thing, James, is that you've got 2 other lads in Arne Engels and Paulo Bernardo who are 21 and 22. They could going to be exceptional footballers. I think we know they're already talented players doing a good job. They could go streets beyond.
Yeah, and I've absolutely no doubt both of them will. I think it's a nice balance that Rodgers is putting together here. But there was a game, Big Collins over from Dublin for the game on Saturday, and I said to him at half time, it's the first time I've ever really looked at Celtic in years that when the midfield's when the team lines came out and the midfield's getting picked, you know McGregor's going to be there, that's fine. Whoever the other two are, I'm really relaxed about it.
Mhm.
And I think Callum McGregor would be fairly much the same, right? Who am I with this week? Right, okay, so we're going to be more like this or more like that kind of thing. But there's no one in there who's like, right, I'm going to have to double work that side or anything. I think the level has got to a point where he's happy pairing in any 2 from 4.
Rio's playing. He's an out and out 8. I'm fine.
Couldn't wait, could you?
He's
This
not having
boy,
it.
this
He's
boy.
not having it.
I do. To your point, James, I think there's 4 guys there, all of whom are very talented, and I think Callum McGregor's pretty happy regardless. Final word on this goes to you, Miff. Before you might not make part 3.
What you did mention is, though, it's Kenny with an I.
Kenny with an I, K-E-N-I, Carmichael, good guy. Thanks to Noel and to Martin for their questions this week. If you want us to answer your questions on a future show, you can message us on any of our social media pages, or you can leave a voicemail on any page of our website at thecelticexchange.com, or simply email me, Tino, at thecelticexchange.com. Let's take another short break. When we come back, we'll do this week's Mystery Goal Scorer. Let's begin the final section of this week's show, as always, by playing Name the Goal Scorer. You know the rules by now. We'll play a clip from a notable Celtic goal, but the goal scorer's name has been beeped out from commentary, and all you have to do is name the goal scorer in question. Before we kick on, let's reveal the answer to last week's Mystery Goal Scorer. Hold on a second. By playing the clip in full, but as you heard last week, it's particularly weird American-style commentary, and I still don't have the reasons behind that. It's just a clip I found online, so here it is.
Now added time. Paul Telford cuts it for Dublin. He catches the left side on a flat-footed McGregor. Goal in the 90th +2. Dublin celebrates his first goal for Celtic. Gordon Strachan celebrates the win as captain Neil Lennon will hold up the CIS trophy. Celtic take the title.
So, Paddy, that was Dion Dublin with a goal in the 90 +2 against Dunfermline. It was the League Cup final. It was March 2006 at Hampden Park. Also known as the Jimmy Johnson final, with Jinky having passed away sadly just 6 days before that game. As you'll remember, every Celtic player wore number 7 on their shorts in tribute. Miff, your recollections of that game?
I wasn't at it. I watched it in the tavern, of all places. Again, as most games under Strachan tended to be, they were never
Collectors
kind of
games.
really free flowing or anything like that. It was just more a case of getting the job done, and I think the emotion of the time, because Jinky passing away, it was more about just getting the trophy in his memory, and I think the one thing that always stands out to me about it was after, I think Roy Keane would have been there. Was Roy Keane there?
Roy Keane went off with a hamstring injury.
Roy
for
Keane was there
Dion
at the
Dublin.
time, and it was Sean Maloney had spoke about afterwards. It spoke about how Keane had spoken to him pre-game and said these are the games where you need to make your impact. He said as much as you're a cracking player, all that type of thing, you'll be remembered for the impact you have in these games. And you know, that in itself, I just thought was a great thing, because obviously they had a really big impact on Sean Maloney.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to know that you're bringing in experienced, well-renowned players, but they're passing that. And I know it sounds like a very obvious thing to say, but it obviously meant a lot coming from Keane to Maloney.
Aye.
And Maloney's career from there, really skyrocketed. So
And he scored a free kick the second goal. Is that right?
I'm sure he did. Aye, who was it? Who got the first one on? Maybe putting you in the spot here.
Magic
Was it
Zaravsky,
Zaravsky?
after a
personal-
cock-up between Alan McGregor, who was on loan at Dunfermline at the
A
time.
personal favourite of mine, Zaravsky. I loved him.
I liked him.
Absolutely
Aye.
loved him.
Liked the
Big shoes to
haircut.
fill.
Oh, aye.
Yes.
James, Dion Dublin, here's some interesting stuff. So he was Celtic's oldest ever debutant for a number of years following his signing in January 2006, but he is not anymore. Do you know who is?
Kasper?
Joe Kasper.
Joe Kasper,
Schmeichel.
correct. So what I've got here, I've got Celtic's 10 oldest debutants in front of me. Do you want to try and name some of them? So you've got a couple there already. So let me see.
Keane.
Kasper Schmeichel at 37 years and 273 days.
Number one at number one.
Lubo.
Dion Dublin, number 2 at 36. You've got another goalie who's the third one,
Joe Hart.
No, we had
going back a wee bit into the 80s.
Latchford.
Alan Ruff.
Alan Ruff.
Nice. Good shout.
And you've got a former Arsenal striker.
Ian Wright.
And you've got a sweeper keeper that Brendan Rodgers signed but didn't work out.
Oh,
Doris.
De Vries.
De Vries.
Is Janino in there?
I don't think he was
no.
that old.
No.
You've got Roy Keane that you mentioned. You've got Joe Hart at 34. You've got Ronnie Simpson also at 34. You've got Paul Telfer at 33.
I was going to say Telfer. Yeah.
And you've got a guy that Brendan Rodgers signed who didn't do much for Celtic, but he played a big part in getting us into the
Colo
Champions
Touré.
League.
Yeah,
Colo Touré. So interesting stuff. James, general thoughts on Dion Dublin before we move on?
I mean, seems like a nice enough big guy, but it wasn't, a glittering career at Celtic. He was just there very beautifully filling in, and it can be helpful, like you're saying about the Keane examples. Guys come in with that level of experience, but Seems to be good at the old Homes Under the Hammer. So
I do enjoy Homes
that.
Under the
It's
Hammer.
good.
I need to
Upstairs in the
honestly-
bedrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's decent at all of that. Let's take a listen to this week's mystery goal scorer.
O'Reilly has settled in superbly. Abada now. And again! What a start to his Celtic career! Celtic go 2-0 up.
Go on, Paddy. Correct. We'll cover it more next week. But obviously, it's relevant given what comes up on Sunday. To see out the show, we're going to do a short or a condensed preview of the Tuesday night game with Zagreb. Obviously, time-wise, we record here on a Monday night. The game kicks off at 5:45 on Tuesday, so it doesn't allow for a full match preview. But we'll cover a bit here on some of the important stuff. So, at the moment in this Champions League set up, the new format, Celtic currently sit in 20th position on 8 points. Zagreb are just slightly behind. They're 23rd on 7 points. They've had some interesting results, to say the least. They lost their first game 9-2 away to Munich. Then they drew 2 each with Monaco. They won 2-0 against Salzburg, and then they beat Bratislava 4-1. And then they lost 3-0 to Dortmund. Obviously, they've done a wee bit better than us over there. They've only won 1 out of their last 6 league games, so they're struggling at the moment. They're currently sitting in 3rd place, 6 points off the top. They get booed off the park on Friday night. They had a 1-each draw with a mid-table side. And their manager, Nenad Belic, is under real pressure. He says they've only got 14 fit players for the game now. Pinch of salt and all that kind of stuff. Managers will say all sorts of things, but he says there's 8 guys, first teamers, that won't be available. So, Paddy, what's your general thoughts on this one? It's an interesting matchup, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it'll be a difficult game. It's a stadium that I don't think a lot of teams like to go and play in. I remember the game.
Hostile.
Aye, it can be, and obviously we're hearing reports that it's not been too much a warm welcome for Celtic fans as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think it'll be any different for the players on the night of the game, but good support travelling over as well. We're hearing that obviously 14 fit players. We're hearing they're in a bit of disarray in their last 6 games, but I still think that we need to remain focused for this one. I would disagree with the narrative that we thought that the game should have been dead and buried against Club Brugge, as they like to be called. I think there's an element of that Celtic fans were just allowed to dream a little bit after that performance in Leipzig, and we were 1 game away from a qualification into the playoffs, so we're dreaming about it. And I think everyone was nervous about it in the stadium, but I've read and heard a lot of people saying that we underestimated who we've got in front of us. I don't think our team or our manager do that at all. Yeah. I think we've got a very, very good setup. I think we've got a very good system in how we're playing in Europe. I think obviously we'll come on to the starting lineups, but I think that the team that go into tomorrow will be more focused than ever for this game. And if you're hearing those little advantages that you might have, get them out your head, because it comes down to who you play in the park in the 90 minutes.
Paddy, did you see the point against Brugge as a point gained rather than 2 lost? Do you think that was a good point to gain?
Absolutely. I think more just in the way that we were probably up against the ropes in the first half, and then I felt that the way that we came out and addressed it in the second half was a lot more positive, playing against a very, very well seasoned team. And I think Rodgers nailed it in the post match. These guys know what they're doing at this level. They're a very good setup. They beat Aston Villa the game day before that, and we could have went for the win in the last 10 minutes. In my opinion, I thought that we had more in the tank come the end of the game. And that's what we've got to take and what we've got to look at and having our advantage going into this game tomorrow night. But I'm excited for us, but I'm not getting carried away with it. I think the players know what needs to be done, and I'm hopeful we're going to do it.
Yeah, and they'll get your scoreline prediction just shortly. Miff, as is often the case in these situations, they've rolled out an ex-player, someone that's played for both clubs, and that man is Viduka. So he was former Croatia Zagreb. They're now Dynamo Zagreb, as we know. What do you think he does nowadays? Have you caught the headline?
Cafe or pizza shop or something?
He runs a coffee shop in Zagreb and sometimes plays guitar in his son's band.
Aye.
So make of that what you will.
No time for him.
But generally you're not happy the way he...
With some player.
Great player.
Outstanding player.
With some player.
Any player that refuses to come out for the second half can fuck off.
Murky arrival to Celtic, murky exit, and he refused to come out in that Inverness Calais Thistle game. I spoke to Jock Brown as part of the Battle to Save Celtic series, and he was really interested in his comments about Viduka. He said that the club seriously messed Celtic about. 4 different times he travelled to Zagreb on each occasion he was told, right, we're ready to sign. He went out there for the meetings, we're not ready. We can't, blah, blah, blah. Messed the club about seriously. And he said every time it out, he had different agents. There was just all sorts of stuff going on, and the warning signs were there. And I think Jock Brown had left Celtic by the time Viduka eventually signed. And as we know, the first thing he'd done on signing for Celtic was went back to Australia, citing some stress issues, which may well have been the case, but I think he played Celtic to an extent at that point. We all know all about the Inverness Cala game. He doesn't come back out at half time and eventually digs his heels in and gets his move. Martin O'Neill often speaks about the case that he was desperate to keep Mark Viduka, but we got 6 million and he used that to get Chris Sutton, and we all know how that worked out. But generally speaking, Viduka has said that while Celtic have got the best fans in the world, and he was kind of singing the praises there, he thinks Zagreb, in his opinion, are favourites due to the home advantage. As Paddy said, he thinks it's a very tough place for teams to travel to. So what's your thinking of what should we be hoping for from this one?
I think to keep yourself, or give yourself a reality check, our away record in Europe generally is poor.
Mm-hmm.
However, the optimism comes from this new found sort of belief we seem to have when we're playing European games. And to go back to the point around the Bruges game, I think we had pretty much agreed when we spoke about it at the time that given the way some previous home European games had worked out in previous campaigns, we would have probably found a way to lose that game rather than dig our way back out and get a point. And if you look at it in the cold light of day, Bruges had, whilst they were impressive in their style of play and their control of the game, we've given them a goal early bells. That completely changes the profile of the game. If that game stays level for a period of time and Celtic bed their way into the game, the chances are we would have probably created more. As it stands, it didn't. So, it's gone. We've got a point. To me, that's a positive. But I think we now need to look at it in the context of that this effectively becomes not quite a knockout game, but it's a one-off game against someone else who are in that same sort of part of the competition as us in terms of league position. So it's pretty much looking at it as if you go there and win, then you're through almost type scenario. So I'm pretty sure that we'll go there and we'll be positive. I don't see it being any other way. I would ignore the noise of them being in disarray. How many times have we had that where you're going away and there's everybody's falling out and then we turn up and they're Brazil 1970. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to that. I'll expect a really, really tough game. I'll go into it hoping more than expecting us to win. But again, much like the Bruges game, if you come away with a point, knowing that you've got young boys to play at home, I think that puts us in that still would keep us in a fairly decent position.
James, on the question about how do we approach it, so a lot of folks are saying, do we take the same approach as we done with the Atalanta game? And part of that is playing Adam Mead up front, so that changes your system and your general approach to the game to a point where you might want to bring Kyogo in for the last half hour or so. Do you think he goes as defence minded? He didn't go into Atlanta parking the bus or anything like that. We played in our same general structure, but we were a lot more reserved than we had been, certainly than we had been in Dortmund and then some. What do you think? Is it something similar or maybe not quite as extreme as that approach?
No, I think it will be, if you want to call that extreme of an approach. This is maybe kind of reflecting back what I'm saying earlier on about playing under Ange. It is the least boring way to play football in the world, but it can be a bit fraught at times. It's going to get
Ange the sack.
It's going to get fraughter. So it's just I think he'll go with Ida, who is starting to really have.
You
form.
Think he will go Ida?
Aye.
Right.
I think he'll go Ida. Just for that, stretching their back line, being slightly more cautious. The thing is, I don't think there's any point in going for a draw here, and I don't really know if that's what we did. I suppose we pretty much did in Atlanta, but it's a point is not really any good. 0 points is the same. It's 3 points or nothing. But if you get 1 point and then go and beat young boys, you're in the same position. So personally, I think you can go for that kind of game. It's almost a free hit given the games you've got left, but you don't want to be leaving it to chance so late in the day. So it's that slightly more cautious approach with Ida up top, and not too far away from Atlanta.
You think get the job done tomorrow night, and actually just
push for qualification.
Save yourself the nerves against young boys as well, because I know that there seem to be the whipping boys of the tournament, but you never know who shows up on the day, and there's pride to play for as well. No, I know what you mean, but well, I know we're coming on to the lineups. I still think it'll be Kyogo.
Let's do it right now. So I'm scribbling down as we speak in terms of the guys that I think we'd all agree will definitely start. So you've got Kasper Schmeichel, 100%. Alistair Johnston will start at right back. It's not cut and dried as to who the other three will be. Well, Carter Vickers will be one of them. I think Carter Vickers and Trusty is now the pairing, now the favoured pairing, but just I'll check if you lads agree. And all of a sudden again, and it's flip-flopping, Taylor seems to be the guy with the shirt there. So I'll ask you, Paddy, what's your back for?
I think we'll have Johnston, Carter Vickers, Trusty and Baye.
Baye, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to agree with Paddy. That's what I think.
Why do you think Baye comes back in?
I think that he's been taken out of, not so much the firing line, I don't think he's been playing bad, but I think he was taken out, and actually from what I've seen of the last few appearances, he's built up a little bit. I think he's just been given almost the same bit of programme that you've seen from Adam Ida.
Somebody also said that Luke McCowan looks like he's more powerful.
So I've just got a bit of thinking that's been that international break, or the two that we've had, and that's been a bit of a programme for those boys. Like, you need to
just smashing Nando's in the gym. just go for it.
You need to get up to that pace and that strength, and everything else will fall in for you. And maybe he wasn't able to kind of keep up with the schedule of training the way he's been training and playing 2 games a week. Now it's time to let him
the
go.
rest. Yeah.
James, does Taylor start for you?
No, I mean, I prefer Baye as a player. I was quite shocked as to how he played against Aberdeen.
Who?
Baye. That's no fun for anyone.
No.
No fun for us. And you're just watching it, and it's
78 minutes of misery and questioning your decisions, and then Ray Hotati pops
I'm
up.
still questioning my decisions. So I thought that was a bit of a shock to his system, to be honest with you, and I thought Taylor came on and did really well.
What didn't help was he got a booking for absolutely nothing.
I know.
And that I think that really...
Well, he got away with a pull just before it.
Yes,
so
but
on the round.
I know, but it was a shocker.
He was deserved the booking and didn't get that one, so I in the round. So yeah, and I thought Taylor came on and did well, despite the fact that he can't face up a Duke at left back.
That's not easy. Duke's powerful.
Oh, it wasn't that. It was just a simple left back. Anyway, I think it's Baye.
Very dismissive.
Point.
So you think Baye starts?
Yeah.
I can't call it. I really can't, because every other time I try and predict it goes the other way, and I don't think Brendan Rodgers knows himself who's the best option there. I actually think he's struggling to get the consistency out of the two of them. The two of them are good at different things. Baye does things that Taylor can't do, and vice versa. And I think there's just still a question mark in that position.
Just to touch very briefly on the Aberdeen game, the context of the defence, I didn't think Big Trusty was great either. He seems to just chuck in these really silly decisions at different times.
Nearly cost us at the death.
Not just that, just use of the ball as well. And he done it at Hearts as well, done it at Tynecastle. So I am not utterly convinced on Trusty at this stage.
He was good at the backs to the wall stuff that night.
But I think with Scales, I mean, as much as Scales is much maligned, partly by me, I must add, he's been exemplary in the Champions League.
Chest and volley on Saturday.
2 man of the match performances in the Champions League. But let's cut to the chase. So we're trying to get through this.
Sorry, but I think that's what it'll be. But with Trusty, there's still a wee question mark for me. That's just my opinion.
Are you going to add to that, Paddy?
No, I think for the Baye argument again, I'll go back to what we were really, really needing. I genuinely believe that Greg Taylor put the fear into our backline in the first half of the game against Brugge, and the minute he was whipped off, we go and score.
It was immediate. Yeah,
it was immediate.
I know. I mean, that is the facts of the matter.
Yeah.
But it's too easy just to say Taylor off, Baye on, and we score.
I'm not just saying that though. I generally think if you look at it's the mindset. So that if you don't want to play the ball down the channel in fear of making a bad pass, you're going to go in the safest option is playing it along the back line. Watch the game back and watch how many times Greg Taylor done that.
Yeah.
And they know that's what it's going. So
put us under so much pressure.
I just wonder, I think the manager sees Baye as the more attacking option, but the fact that we're away from home, I just wonder if he's been a wee bit more cagey.
Maybe.
Baye played in Atalanta?
Don't know.
I think he did. I think Baye started in Atalanta.
I
think he did.
Taylor was injured.
My point being, that was quite a defensive performance, and I thought he stood up to quite well. Yes, he was a bit loose in possession at times, but I thought defensively he was really good. That
can recover well.
It's taken us about 10 minutes. We're needing at the midfield. Wrap this up.
You did ask
about number 8 and number 6.
You did ask a question.
Miff, who have we got
your number 6?
Right, so Callum McGregor definitely starts.
But he could play up front.
Quite quickly, who's the two that go alongside him?
Hatate and Bernardo.
Engels and Bernardo.
Hatate and Engels.
Is the correct answer, James?
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm going with.
Oh,
It is Engels. It is Hatate. I honestly think that's what we'll see, and I do think, going back to Engels, we obviously spoke about him in a bit of length earlier on. I think he does offer a physicality and a robustness and some of the attributes you need for this kind of arena away from home in Europe when you'll be up against it at different times in the game, and I think he can really complement what Callum McGregor does. So maybe two number sixes, myth, also known as the double pivot. Correct. So I think that's what we'll see, but as we agreed earlier on, it's Callum McGregor, and any two of the other four we're generally okay with, but I do think it might be Engels and Hatate. Up top, Celtic's best lineup, generally the three, it's Kuhn, it's Kyogo and it's Maeda. But horses for courses, and Adam Ida might be the shout there, and that's a big call that Rodgers will have to make. Paddy, what do you think he'll go with?
Yeah, I do think it. Well, I would like Kyogo. I do think it will be Kyogo. I would not be against Adam Ida starting, and I can understand the sense of why they're trying to do that. But I think with what you're saying in terms of they might go for it tomorrow night. We don't play target man even with Ida on the park, and I think you need a player like Kyogo to break lines, and they'll try and play a higher game against us tomorrow. I can see Kyogo giving us a very strong hour, and hopefully we can get an early lead in that, and then Adam Ida maybe to come on and see it out for us.
Yeah.
I do think in the same way that Bruges, based on the games they've got left, they've got like Man City, Juve and Sporting Lisbon. I think they thought Celtic at Celtic Park is a big opportunity for them to get 3 points.
100%.
And that's why they played the way they done so. And I think Zagreb will see this as a similar opportunity.
Yeah.
They're at home, they're on 7 points versus our 8 points. The one would take them to 10, and every chance you qualify on 10. I think they go for it. I think they need to go for it. Their manager's up against it. I've read some of his comments. He maintains they'll still win the league, and they've got ambitions of going as far as they can in the Champions League. And I think if they don't come out and go for it against Celtic, they never will. And I do think that plays into Celtic's hands. And maybe from that point of view, that's where Kyogo is the guy that could exploit that. So
I think he does get the pace to get in behind as well, absolutely. But I just think on the break with Maeda, with Kuhn, Kyogo's very clever in his movement with that.
I'm also pleased with the Adam Ida that's turned up the last few weeks.
100%.
He's looking better.
Definitely.
£9 million player.
Yeah, looking
definitely.
sharper. All right, let's get to the scoreline predictions. So I suppose generally I'd ask, would you take a draw? And you can answer that at the same time. But overall, what do you think the score will be and why?
2-2. Just because I think it will be two teams going to try and win the game. I think there'll be goals. But like I said, our record away from home doesn't really inspire. We don't regularly turn up at other teams and win, so I'm going for a 2-2 draw.
And you'd be happy with that, yeah?
Yeah, I'd rather be one, but I think it still leaves us then if we beat Young Boys, we're in a good
You'd be
position.
11 points. Paddy, what do you think?
I'd like to see a performance with no mistakes,
Good luck with that.
no red cards, no dodgy
No.
deflections, no pass backs, and I think that the focus will be there tomorrow. I'm going to go 1-0 Celtic.
1-0, brilliant. James?
10-0 Celtic. 10-0 Celtic.
Might even watch it.
Nah.
No, I think it's set up for a kind of a cup final, approach,
Aye.
because whoever wins goes through. Doesn't knock the other one out, but manager playing for his job has to go for it. No real point in us not going for it. So on your one, I would prefer Kyogo, but I think it'll be Ida. But I think it'll be 3-2. James Forrest scoring the winner.
Oh, mate.
Come on,
Beautiful.
come on.
There you go.
Similarly, kind of neat, but I think it'll be 2-1 Celtic. I think we've got it in us to go there. I think this is a different Celtic. I think this is a Celtic that have evolved in this season alone. I think the Dortmund thing, I keep going back to it, I think it was such a sore learning curve, but a learning curve all the same. And I think they took the lessons directly into that next game against Atalanta. And I think we've shown a maturity against Bruges, or Brugge as some people call them, and different things like that. But I do think
Resident
Wow.
Alan McNally.
My goodness.
I believe the term we used earlier was sniding.
I know.
Oh,
sorry, Keith. Get it?
would you like some milk with that?
I hope we get beat.
I know. Get it up, you Tino.
You're a cultured man, Paddy. I take it back.
Who's Munchen playing tomorrow?
As some people are calling
I
them.
know. Just threw me right out there.
Paris Saint-Germain.
And, hey, Say it, if you're going to say it right.
Say it right.
Absolutely.
Try and a
Did
bit
you
of
know
culture to the show,
Exactly.
Paddy.
Called me an Alejandro earlier as well.
I know. Maybe I'm the problem. And I'm going for 2-1, but I think it's good that there's general kind of positivity. Listen, we get sky high pre-Dortmund, didn't we? We all kind of
Oh man, we were away.
we're heading for the stars. But I do think we're in a good place. I think generally, we've spoken about this form gauge. Celtic have played something like 23 games this season now. 1 defeat against Dortmund. Everything else going in a good place. And I also think the fact that Brendan Rodgers is now getting more time with his players, the international stuff stopped, and it's all Celtic at this moment in time. I think that suits Rodgers and the players, and I just think that we're kind of growing and evolving. I think we're in a pretty good shape getting into this one, so let's see how it goes. Before we go into the final comments, big shout out to Dale O'Reilly, a lad that Miff knows well actually, and the guys from the Celtic Supporters Podcast. They're in a charity weekend of podcasts over the weekend just past to raise money for the brilliant work that the Kano Foundation do. I'll link to the Just Giving page for that in the show notes, and if you can spare a couple of pounds at all, then please do so. I was on with Dale on Sunday night on their YouTube channel looking ahead to Celtic's final games of 2024, so check that out if you get a chance. There's also an interview there with Kevin and Joe, two of the key members of the Kano Foundation. But if you know Dale well, they've done some great stuff there over the weekend.
Dale's a really good lad, known Dale for a long time. Also know Kevin at the Kano as well. So listen, just great work and great that it's getting that sort of profile among Celtic fans.
Yeah, spot on. So well done to the guys there. Paddy, your final comments for the week?
I'm just really excited. I think we go into this with that optimism based on the previous fixtures that we've had in this tournament. We're looking to go into the last stages of the Champions League after Christmas. When was the last time we said that, boys? I think that's absolutely brilliant. And the beauty of it is that we could be doing it within the 6-game marker. And and I know it's a different format, but yeah, I think being able to potentially go into games against Young Boys and Aston Villa with actually a bit of a trial and error, and then also looking at what we can do with the transfer window to bolster our attempts to qualify and go even further in the tournament. That's got to be a bit of a marker for a manager.
Do you know what I was going to ask? Can you sign players in January to play in your final 2 group games?
I don't know. No, I don't think you can do that.
Play after.
They can play after.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I just think this time tomorrow we could be through. Just about. That would be something. James, your own final thoughts?
I think it's quite amazing. We've done a full podcast here and barely mentioned a cup final on Sunday. Is that another mark of Espanyolification of Rangers?
Oh, I like that.
Is it? Do you know what I mean? Because the focus is all about tomorrow night, and once that's gone, we'll be looking at Sunday. But it's the less of the 2 games.
It's a fair point, and it's not by design. We've caught the kind of most important things, and we will do a full preview on Friday. We'll get together for that. But maybe James is right, Miff. Maybe this is where we're at. So I'll leave it to you for the final word.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that long ago we were looking at a sort of 10-game block and how punishing it would be, and how do you think we would do in that? And since then we've been away to Tynecastle, one away to Pittodrie, one taking care of business at Celtic Park, picked up a point against Bruges. So they're upholding their end of the bargain, to be fair, the players and the manager. So it's really just a case of continuing that momentum. These are the weeks that you follow football for. Really important away game in Europe, cup final against your rivals at the weekend. Bring it on.
This is what it's all about. That wraps things up on this latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to James, Paddy and Miff, and thanks to you for tuning in. We'll be back on Wednesday with the Final Whistle show following the game in Zagreb, and we'll also be bringing you our big cup final preview on Friday. Timings for that TBC, so keep an eye on the socials for that. Finally, if you aren't already doing so, remember to visit the CelticExchange.supercast.com for additional listener benefits and to see how you can support us as a member of the Celtic Exchange Plus this season. But in the meantime, as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again very soon.